think we are ready for some football, guys. This has been a long time waiting. We still don't know if the season's going to happen, but we are roughly 3 days away. Hopefully it does happen, but I think everybody needs a little normalcy in their life right now, so hopefully we can get some of that.
3 days. It's happening Thursday. I never thought we'd get to this. It's kind of crazy.
You know what's weird? It's that whole COVID 2020 thing where you don't think it's gonna. You just kind of assume something's gonna go wrong and they're gonna cancel the season in the next 3 days.
Yeah. Well, they pretty much canceled college football, right? More or less.
No, different. That's the problem. College football is going by conference, and different conferences are doing different things. So
I see. Okay.
Some conferences are playing within conference. Some are doing limited schedule. Some are doing later schedule. The problem becomes the conferences that want to do later scheduling want the BCS playoff moved back in the spring.
Right.
What you've already seen, which we'll get into a little in the future, is number one receiver from last year, the LSU receiver that was better than everybody, won the Blitnikoff last year, has already said sitting out the whole year.
Smart move. Yeah. Good job, buddy.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a probably top 3 fantasy draft pick next, fantasy draft.
Yeah.
Not playing at all. So you're going to have to go buy a year-old tape, something we said previously.
Interesting. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how much that drops his
how many guys, if their schools are going to play a spring schedule, and if the BCS does come out and say, we're going to do the playoff where it is in February, how many of the guys from teams like I think it's the Pac-10 and the Big 12 go, well, then I'm not going to play.
Yeah, I think it's a whole bunch of bullshit because you have some teams that are not even having school going, and they're like, cool, you're going to play for us, and you're not getting anything.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still not getting paid. So to me, it's a whole bunch of BS of people just trying to make money off of these college athletes.
Oh, yeah. And the money fall of how much there is to not have a season is insane. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars that are lost for the colleges. So it's almost like to the point where financially they have to have a season no matter what, or else the college loses all that revenue. So it's an interesting problem.
I just found it ironic that Jim Harbaugh was out there petitioning to have Big Ten football when the president of Michigan was like, no, voting for no football. Here's your head coach who's, the highest paid employee in the state of Michigan. Is out there like saying, we want football.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's a big difference. Yeah. If you're Jim Harbaugh, you're going, if I don't play, this is the way I look at it as a player. If Alabama and Clemson and those schools are playing in the fall, okay, and you're not playing till spring, the way I look at that is they're getting recruits first. They're first in the door on recruits. They're going, this was our wins. Here, come in, see the game. Those recruiting trips that we've been on, if you're playing in the spring, you're going, we don't have anything to show you yet. So, like, from my perspective, if I'm a coach, I desperately want to play now because I'm going to lose a ton of recruits based on the fact that I'm delaying my schedule. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, that's a consequence that most people don't even consider.
Exactly. And if you're the president of the university, you're not thinking of that, and you're just going, oh, for the sake of the university, and 99% of our students will push the football season back and still make our money off it and still make the same money just 6 months later. And coaches and team is going, well, no, because if we do, we're going to be worse the next 3 years because we're not going to get the recruits we need.
Yeah. So. I tried watching a little college football this past weekend, and it was okay. It was okay. I mean, it's not like really high caliber teams, but it felt like warm up for the season that we have coming up in regards to the NFL, which I think we all have something we're looking forward to with this season that maybe, and it doesn't even have to be COVID related or anything like that. It's just something that you're looking forward to with this season.
I think the interesting thing is that for those that have canceled the season and the effects of teams that are actually playing a season, like I was watching Army football on Saturday, and I love the triple option, don't get me wrong. But
running 100% of the plays.
Of all the games that were canceled and conferences canceled, Army only is playing 4 games this year.
Yeah. Really?
4 games. One of them last weekend, I think Tulane is in there, and 2 other opponents. Air Force, I think.
And Navy, probably.
Yeah. There's your 2020 Army football schedule.
4 games.
4 games.
So I think for the NFL. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
No, I don't. I guess you're looking for what we're looking forward to.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to how much players react to the variables. We don't know, but the stuff that occurs because outbreaks are going to happen. No fans is a bigger deal in football than anything else, and also we negotiated as players. We negotiated for no OTAs. Now we have no preseason. So many people are going to get hurt playing football. Yep. It's going to be insane.
Yeah, that's
like they already are, and I'm not looking forward, but I'm looking forward to seeing how teams react and players that kind of, especially in a fantasy aspect. Treb's always had this. Any guy is worth a waiver that's one remove from a starting position. That's always been like your policy.
More or less, yeah.
This year, there's going to be like 2 or 3 people that are going to be in the upper echelon of fantasy rankings because so many people are going to go down. Yeah. So you could be 2 behind somebody. I mean, you already saw, we just talked Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yep.
Average draft position coming in around 5 to 7. Damian Williams goes down. Now it's like skyrocketing. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's going to be so much more of a fluid season where teams are going to have to react, and so many players are going to be playing that, you never would have thought would have been a fantasy factor that are going to be huge factors. So that's I'm looking forward to that a lot. Just seeing the player that comes out of nowhere that we're just like, how did we not see that? But in 2020 with COVID, it makes 100% sense.
I'm interested to see how, and I don't know if I'm really looking forward to it, but it's kind of an inevitable thing. I'm interested to see how the NFL is going to move and shake around weeks, basically, because it's going to have a huge impact on fantasy football. If the Chiefs end up having to get quarantined because half their team gets infected, they're going to miss out on 2 to 3 weeks of games, kind of like the Cardinals have in Major League Baseball, where they've had to play like 24 games in 23 days or some insane thing like that. I'm interested to see what happens if the Chiefs have to take off, just any team really, have to take off for 3 weeks, and then it's like, are they going to attack them at the end? Are they going to be playing short weeks? Are they going to? It's going to be an interesting. I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to happen and how that's going to work.
Or you have like 4 linemen that get COVID and are out, but you're not enough players to cancel the week. Yeah. Like, how are the coaches going to adjust something?
Yeah,
like that?
and it's really interesting because they always use the term the running back room, right? And in like, at least from Hard Knocks, they all are actually in the same room working together. If someone in the running back room on a team gets sick and infects all the other running backs on the team, what's going to happen? I mean,
you're passing the whole game.
Do they pass? Do they go to the? It's something that it's like, it's nice to have a handcuff of Tony Pollard for Ezekiel Elliott, but if Zeke gets sick, then there's a good chance Pollard's going to get sick. It's just like a weird part of the game, I guess.
And I think that goes back to like what I was saying, is that you could see some really ridiculous people being fantasy factors that you'll be like, I remember this guy. Like I always think it's ridiculous, but I think of Bo Scarborough. He's an Alabama running back after Derrick Henry, and he's very Derrick Henry-like.
Right.
And he was on the Dallas practice squad, and then he was on the Lions practice squad, and then he got a piece of time for the Lions.
And it was of time. Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay, this is pretty good. And he's just one of those guys where it's like Arian Foster, when he was in practice squad for 7 years, and all of a sudden he's the best fantasy player in like 4 years.
Yeah.
Guys like that where I'm like, I kind of want to see what he's capable of, and you might see that. I also think this is a huge opportunity for the NFL to look better. The NFL never has the moral high ground or the high ground or good optics. This is the opportunity for them to have their testing policies are way better. You've seen that with Hard Knocks. And they have the chance, especially at the back end of COVID, if it doesn't come back in the fall, to look good. The other sports looked bad. Baseball looked really bad. Basketball in the dome looks very weird. Football has the chance to look good by comparison, which could be a big deal just for their reputation.
Yeah, cool. And it's interesting. I mean, all the sports are now piping in that sound, but football, it seems like it's like the fans and the sound is such an important part of the game that it's almost gonna be weird when they're kind of piping it in, and you look in the stands. There's kind of
it would be strange for a football game to be silent, especially on the field. It would be so odd.
Yeah, that's a huge home field advantage.
What they say, they were piping in 75 decibels, I think, per stadium that they're doing to simulate a crowd there. And I was saying to myself, man, that's the most fans the Chargers will have in their home stadium.
Well,
the Seahawks have been doing that for years.
Thinking back to last year, the Chiefs won playoff games because they were in Arrowhead.
Yeah.
The Patriots in the past have won games because the crowd in Foxborough.
I'm just curious if they're going to fine every team that pumps in noise this year.
It's like technically against the rules.
Yeah. The Seahawks have been doing it for a while. What are the other teams that have gotten in trouble? Falcons got in trouble.
The Falcons were the one that lost draft pick.
That's right. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I look forward to is the change of storylines. Like what we're expecting going into the season is that there's going to be like 100 different things that we're like, I didn't see that coming with the season. Yeah. That's what I love about football season, other than the athleticism and the strategy.
I think the thing I'm looking forward to most is from a fantasy level is taking this league and this dynasty perspective, how are we all going to manage our rosters? There's some of us with rosters that are completely stacked from head to toe, and that if you have to make a critical roster decision to drop a certain guy to potentially pick up a certain guy, and how people are going to make those decision making choices just to whether it be just a field or roster for that week.
Yeah, it's that's kind of like, I agree with what both you said, is the stuff that you don't see is going to be the most interesting. The stuff that you never thought of, because that's what it's been in other sports. Like when baseball started, you thought, oh, there could be something, it could occur, and then the entire Marlins franchise was destroyed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And by default, they hit like 2 teams that they had then played. No one saw that big an outbreak coming.
Yeah.
Basketball, you put them in the dome, and it's been fairly good, but just the oddity of seeing no fans and it looking like a gym game. It's the same thing. Like we're gonna, football's different than those sports by a large margin. It's gonna be very strange.
That's where a lot of the entertainment comes from. Yeah. A lot of my either sports betting, fantasy sports stuff, very speculative when it comes to that stuff. But it's usually trying to find these future storylines or foresee them, but obviously you're wrong majority of the time. But that is where a lot of this entertainment comes from. And I know that a year ago, I was definitely the one leading the Cam's hit the age curve. Let's move on from him.
Yeah.
And I am not trying to be biased with the Patriots, but I can expect. I have high expectations of what can occur now. I mean, obviously this is all camp talk and everything, but
right.
if I were to make a bold prediction about this season, I can actually see Cam Newton being an MVP of the NFL. Don't know if they win a Super Bowl or not, but this is a bold prediction. It doesn't mean I'm going to bet on this, right? But I can see it happening.
His opportunity is unreal. I mean, he's filling in for, obviously Tom Brady, probably the greatest of all time of quarterbacks. In an offense, that's obviously well led by Belichick. It's going to be really interesting to see how, and he's had a year off, so in theory he's had time to heal. We know how he's capable of some amazing things. So I think it's going to be interesting to see Cam Newton kind of try and work in an offense like that.
I think we're it's bold predictions, and it's over. And he hasn't been able to stay on the field for 3 years. Just because he's playing for the Patriots doesn't mean his injury history goes away. I agree with you. Seeing him in that offense could be great. That's not the factor for me. It's him being on the field consistently. If they put him on a pitch count or package counts kind of thing, where Stidham and Hoyer have other packages that they're in for, it could be really interesting. I think if anybody was ever going to do quarterback by committee with different packages for different guys, it would be Belichick, especially coming after Brady. I don't know. He's going to get injured. I don't see it.
I just Cam goes down.
It's going to be a nagging injury. It might not be something big, but he's had a history of it, and he's a big guy, and he likes to run, and he's run for too long. His body's compromised. It's going to get injured. When you keep getting injured, you keep getting injured. Right. You know what I mean? You don't magically heal. So I agree. When he's on the field, I'm very excited to see what he's capable of. There's just no way he's going to be a viable option for them for 16 games plus playoffs. So they've got to figure out some kind of concept where he's not on the field all the time.
I think the thing that's curious to me is how does Josh McDaniels adjust the playbook for Cam's style? This is the first time he's really been able to open a playbook to a new area of dimension that he really couldn't do with Tom Brady and his mobility. Granted, Cam is not as mobile as he once was. I still think that's an element to the offense that might, bring a new layer to the offense overall in New England we haven't seen in a long, long time.
I think you guys are going to be interested to hear my bold prediction that I have for the year.
What's your bold prediction?
My bold prediction is that tight end for the Miami Dolphins, Mike Gesicki, ends the season as tight end number 1 in fantasy football. Debate.
Yeah, that is a bold.
My reasoning is that I think Miami's going to end up throwing the ball a lot because their running backs are all terrible. They're going to be losing a lot of their games, and I think he's going to be on the field a lot. He's going to be running out of the slot, and I think he's going to end up as being one of the main targets for either Tua or Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I see him cleaning up in garbage time, getting a lot of dump offs, and I think he has the capability to do it. He's young. he's going to be a big part of that offense.
None of that is wrong. It's just that George Kittle exists, in my opinion. All the stuff you said is true about Gesicki, but it's also true for Kittle in a better system, in a tried and true system with a guy I know is better than Gesicki.
Right, but the thing is, San Francisco also just piled up a lot of receivers on their team too, and
they've all become injured.
Well, that is fair. I think the beginning of the year, Kittle's going to crush it. I really do. But I think as the other receivers for San Francisco come in, and don't forget, San Francisco seems to be a primary run offense as well. So I think a lot of the they're going to be ahead in games, and they're going to end up running the ball a lot.
It's a valid, bold prediction.
Yeah.
I'm more of an anti-Gesicki guy. It's no offense to your perception.
Yeah.
I just haven't seen it from him at all. And then I think with the type of player that he is, that he's more of a wide receiver than a tight end. And then I put that behind Devontae Parker, Preston Williams. He's probably the WR3, or if the consideration is that we're seeing Jakeem Grant, even though I'm not happy to say that, but the WR3 on that team is a no-namer at this point, right? So it's a matter of if Gesicki, to me, it's Gesicki either ends up being their WR3, or if not, then I just have a hard time at tight end with that. They also brought in Adam Shaheen. I'm not a huge Shaheen fan, but it feels similar to like a guy that was highly drafted for the Bears initially, and then just let go, and now he just got picked up by Miami. So, I mean, anything can happen. It's bold prediction.
I like it as a bold prediction, though, because there is a lot of weight behind it, and he is an underrated tight end. There's so many good tight ends that I just don't see him crescendoing to one. If you would have said top 3, I would have been like, that's not even bold.
I think
that's not even bold.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
The safe thing I could have said top 3, and you guys probably
that would have just been a prediction, you know.
Yeah, but number 1.
Yeah.
Wow, my bold prediction. Let's get the funny one out of the way. Joshua Kelly, a top 24 running back for the Los Angeles Chargers, and taking over the top role.
Can't hear it. I'm staring at the microphone. Face.
I gotta be honest. I did draft Joshua Kelly in a league, so it's getting to my brain. It's getting to my brain.
But if I had to give a serious bold prediction, I think Dwayne Haskins loses his job by the middle of the season, and Alex Smith takes over and leads Washington to the playoffs.
I dig it. Ooh, to the playoffs! That is bold.
I was like, that's not that bold, and then I was like, that's...
Let me finish the last
And then that's a comedy show.
I mean, listen, there's 7 spots now in the playoffs. The odds are higher to certainly get in. Granted, the NFC is a lot more stacked than what the AFC is. I think that with Ron Rivera, he's going to see what Dwayne Haskins has to offer in the first 4 games. He's not going to see, and he's going to go back to the old crafty veteran. And I think every one of us here is cheering for Alex Smith after what he dealt with and such. Probably not Jim, of course.
I think it's great that he made the team, but he's not.
I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the Redskins were in a playoff position when Alex Smith got hurt.
Yeah,
and then they had to fall on Mark Sanchez, and then I think maybe Dwayne Haskins after. I don't even remember the full.
It is a bold prediction. I don't think they're going to make playoffs. I can see them taking a shot at Alex Smith after Dwayne Haskins lets them down after, 8-9 games, whatever it is.
We always say in fantasy, you go where the money goes, and Alex Smith is still making a boatload of cash on that team.
That's true.
He also has one leg.
Yes. Teddy Bridgewater still has one leg, and people are still taking shots on him, even though he's like
he showed he could play last year, and it was not the same injury. So, my bold prediction is based more on history. It's not. It's actually, I don't think it's that bold if history didn't go against it. But my bold prediction is that the Jacksonville Jaguars go 0-16. I see no reason for them to win a football game with where they're at as a team. They've unloaded every good piece of talent they've accrued over the last 3 years. Gardner. I don't even want to say it.
Minshew.
Yeah, there we go. Good enough has 1 or 2 good young receivers, but they have nothing.
Yeah.
They have nothing on either side of the ball. Nothing. I see no reason for them to win a football game this year.
So I would say that's the least bold of all of our predictions.
Agreed. It's just based on history that so few teams go 0-16. But
what other teams are in that realm of just full tank 0-16 tank for the quarterback? For what's his? I assume that the number 1 pick next year is
Trevor Lawrence.
Is going to be Trevor Lawrence. Yeah.
I don't think any team is in full tank mode. I think you saw a couple teams make some moves where they were okay being in rebuild. Nothing to the... I don't remember one in recent history that's as bad as the Jacksonville Jaguars over the last 2 years. Talking about an AFC championship game team that should have beat the Patriots and gone to the Super Bowl to
that defense was wicked.
Was it 6 or 8 Pro Bowlers they had on their team?
They were 2 years ago, in the AFC Championship game with the lead.
And last year and this year, they have disassembled without adding anything at all.
Yeah,
I agree with you. It doesn't sound well. It's just that because there's only been 2 0-16 teams total, so it's just history that makes it bold. But
let me try and embolden your bold
go ahead.
pick. They're not going to go 0-16. But with the perceived how shitty the Jacksonville Jaguars are, Gardner Minshew fucks up them getting any of the 3 QBs in next year's draft by going 7-9. And they're stuck with Gardner, even though it's like it creates this great storyline that everybody loves drinking Bud Light because they wasted their drafts.
So teams that if you look at history, teams that were going to be bad and ended up screwing up draft order, they have had coaches that players typically play for. You're talking about Brian Flores. You're talking about...
I'm just waiting for you to name all the New York Jets that did this.
Yes. So, but that's the thing is Brian Bowles was a phenomenal players coach.
Yeah.
Teams played for... He got the most out of those players.
Todd Bowles, you mean?
Yeah, what did I say?
Brian Bowles.
There is a Brian Bowles. Never mind. That's right. What's his name from Jacksonville? I forget his name. Head coach.
Marone?
Yeah, Doug Marone is 1 foot out the door. They're going to fire him.
Yeah.
So it's not a situation.
And they're not giving him a chance because they're selling.
Exactly. So it's not a situation where I see those players going, man, we're gonna buckle down and we're gonna win one for the Gipper. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're gonna, Gardner's gonna try, and those rookies and young receivers are gonna try, but the defense is devoid of any talent now.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where, yes, that has happened in the past. It's not going to happen for Doug Marone. He's gotten in the last 2 years. He's gotten in more than 3 fights with his own players on the sideline. These are not players that are going to play up for him to keep his job. That's what was happening in those other situations where players didn't want those coaches to go anywhere, so they're playing really hard to keep those guys around. This is not going to happen for them.
It's hard for me in regards to with Jacksonville because you had Coughlin go in and picked Marone himself, but now that Coughlin's been gone, Marone stays there. But every player is screaming out of there. So something is terribly wrong there, and this might lead towards, management as opposed to just the coach.
Well, if you see how bad Tony Khan is running AEW also, they could just need new ownership.
Segue.
It's a mess. The Jacksonville Jaguars are a mess. And
they should have cleaned house when Coughlin was gone. Just clean house, new GM, new coach all the way around. I don't know why they get Caldwell the chance.
And the problem too is so they tank, they get Lawrence. Lawrence is going to get destroyed. Yeah. They don't have an offensive line. They don't have anyone for him to throw to. It's going to be a disaster. And he's not even going to be able to develop right for a couple of years.
And there's little things. We had a conversation earlier today about the difference between good GMs and bad GMs. It was brief. It was just the idea that good GMs will make moves that, even in the long run, will net them positive gain, and bad GMs always seem like they're on the back end of something that seems stupid.
Right.
Leonard Fournette being a top 10 running back last year and then saying on a rookie contract you couldn't get anything for him is not true. It's just not.
Yeah.
He had multiple suitors after he cleared waivers. It's just not true. So it's just one of those things where whoever's running that organization is just not doing a good enough job. Same thing. When you part with Fournette, there's multiple guys where if you weren't tanking, you could have brought in, like Adrian Peterson, something like that. You could have brought them in to fill that running, but you didn't. You intentionally left it devoid of talent to be worse. So that's why it's one of those things where
it's a clear tank.
It's a tank. And there's so few times in football where a team tanks, and I'm just looking at them going, man, why did you do that? Like, why did you part with Yannick Ngakoue for nothing? Why did you part with Leonard Fournette for nothing? This makes no sense. Even looking back to something like Marquise Lee, parting with him for nothing, it's so many players back to the Jalen Ramsey dump off.
Well, it's interesting too because the drafts end up being so top heavy with the quarterbacks being at the top. Or usually there's 2 to 3 players that everybody's like, wow, these guys are top end talents. We want one of those first 3 picks that people pay out the nose through. Basketball, it's become a situation where teams just fully tank without fail. The Sixers did it for years and years and years. Football, for whatever reason, maybe it's because their schedules are lower. There wasn't really teams that did it. I mean, there were teams that would be bad. Like, there were 0-16 teams. The Lions sucked. But a lot of that was just because those teams kind of sucked. There's never been a specific team that's like, all right, listen, we're going to get rid of everything. We're going to get rid of our defense. We're going to put in a quarterback that probably doesn't have a chance, and we're specifically going to go for that first pick at the beginning of the season.
It very much, in my opinion, depends on two things. Basketball and baseball, to a lesser extent, you can turn around a franchise with a single player.
Right.
Like, if you get Zion Williamson, whether you like him or not, you think it's going to turn your entire franchise around. Unless it's a quarterback of the level of can't miss. I'm doing air quotes, even though we're on a podcast. Peyton Manning,
Andrew Luck.
Trevor Lawrence is the next tier of that player.
Right.
That's why you could see a tank for it. It's one of those things where you can't, like, if you don't know if that guy's going to hit, you tank, and all of a sudden you don't hit on that draft pick. Football's so hard to turn your team around on one player because you can't do it with receivers. You can't really do it with running backs. You can't do it with one defensive player. The only position you can do it at is if you get that one quarterback. It's the only position you can do it at.
Yeah.
So it's more or less, it's just hard to tank. In other sports, it's not that hard to tank. If you miss on basketball, you could tank, miss on a guy in the first round if you get a top 3 pick, and then tank again and try again the next year, and there's going to be another 3 players.
And there's only 5 players on the court.
Exactly.
So,
in football, if you tank and miss on that guy, there aren't guys like that again for a couple years, unless it goes crazy.
Right.
So it's just much harder to tank in football, in my opinion. There's so many players on the field; it's so much different.
Yeah.
So that's why you don't see it as much. But I think if you think Trevor Lawrence is that next great quarterback, you can tank for it. You haven't seen teams do it in the past. I mean, the Colts accidentally tanked, and went Peyton Manning into Andrew Luck, but that's basically what it was. With Peyton Manning on their team, they went 1-15.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it does work. You just have that quarterback has to be the guy.
Right.
So,
I mean, I think too the interesting thing is that we're all just the mess in Jacksonville. It's like a lot of people are loving Jacksonville because they have all these picks. I do not trust anybody in the front office in that regime with those picks. It's almost feels like Sashi Brown back in the Browns in those days when he had all these picks, like 15 picks in the first 3 rounds, and just could not execute at all.
Browns are still like that today.
You know what's funny is I agree with you. If they could have tanked, their receiving core is the one spot on their whole team that's not that bad. DJ Chark, if Laviska Shenault plays up, they like him a lot. They got to get the quarterback, and then if they just throw all those other picks at defense, you could make a quick turnaround if you get some pieces in place. The Fournette one was what baffled me because I feel like if you keep Fournette on your team, you're not going to be good enough to win anyway. Mm-hmm. But with the other pieces in place, keeping a running game, those young receivers, and then putting every other draft pick into defense and maybe the offensive line, you could turn around. But now you're going to bring in a quarterback and go, you have no running game. Yeah. You have no running game. So,
like, next year, this is what I think is going to happen with them. Caldwell's going to be out, and your boy Eric Bieniemy is going to become the head coach there.
And that would be awesome, but it's just a shame because Trevor Lawrence has to be freakish good for that to happen. And I hope for his sake he is because I like a lot of those young players, but man, that's like I said before, good GMs can find a way to do it without parting with anything or getting enough pieces back. I just don't feel like they've gotten nearly enough back or been, like I said, had a tried and true record of being a good enough GM or organization to pull it off, Yeah. It's the reason the Browns, like you guys have mentioned, it's the reason the Browns have been bad for so long because they've tried to do it and they just constantly keep missing on quarterbacks and missing on players where it's like, you keep accruing picks, but it's like there's nothing in your franchise that makes me think you're going to turn around.
Yeah, and you look back at that Odell pick and everybody's like, why would you ever trade away? But now looking back, everybody's like,
well, it looks great now.
Odell's, I don't know. It's just crazy because I still think he's a top 5 receiver in skill.
Yeah, you're drafting, but it's funny too because then you're drafting a strong safety this year, having parted with Jabril Peppers.
Yeah.
He then gets hurt.
Yeah.
And is out for the season.
Yep.
So you don't look smart.
David Njoku is a former first-round pick, is now your tight end too after giving Austin Hooper all that money.
So they run a 2 tight end set. Njoku's going to be tight end 2, but he's going to be on the field.
I think he's the tight end 3 in that team now.
No, he's tight end 2.
I guess we'll find out in about a week. We'll find out about a week.
I just want to give one more bold prediction.
Yeah, go on.
I think that the Houston Texans will finish under 500 and Bill O'Brien's have a job at the end of the season.
I don't think that's bold at all.
I personally think, like, you give
Just
Sean
a
that
hater.
Oh, totally.
No, I think that's just a prediction. I think there's a good chance that could happen.
I mean, I think a lot of people still have them in the playoffs at like 9-7 or 10-6. I just don't see it with that roster and what they have around Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
How about Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller? Neither of them end up as the wide receiver 1 on that team at the end of the season.
Yes.
Will Fuller, dude.
I think all of us have been
in his
trying,
4 games that he plays.
We've all been trying to find information about our teams and what's going on in preseason with no games, and we all pay attention to as much as we can, right? But usually we're more in tune with our own teams. So maybe we should think about what we're looking forward to in regards to our own teams that we cheer for. Dan, you're a Cowboys fan. Trev, you're an Eagles fan.
Patriots
Ross,
fan.
you're a Colts fan. I'm a Patriots fan.
COVID changed Treb.
Because you may have more details in regards to our teams than what we're truly tapped in for fantasy.
Just to clarify, are we all Cleveland Browns fans still in this podcast?
Yeah, I had a shirt on.
I'm such a Browns fan. I'm at the point where I'm trying not to let people know it.
Yeah, that's smart. Just keep it safe.
It's one of those things, though, that we've actually been fans of them for a while now, and it's kind of getting to the point where you kind of feel it. It's like,
I feel like a Browns fan.
I get it
Yeah.
now. Like, it sucks. So, like,
Yeah, going into the season, I'm like, Browns, whatever. Like
before last year, it was kind of going to be, people are going to think we switch just because they're going to be good this year. They're terrible. They're all terrible.
And no expectations. Baker had such high expectations, and now everybody's like, I mean, for fantasy, he's not on anyone's draft boards. I've seen him drafted in maybe one league that I'm in.
I'm completely
wild.
I'm completely sold on Baker being a total bust. I don't think
Yeah.
there's anything that I've talked to Jim about this.
I've taken your advice
I don't think
and
there's
traded
anything-
him basically in everything I
I
had.
don't think there's anything he's shown. I think all the stuff that he worried about when he was getting drafted showed up last year. So that stuff, if it didn't go away 4 years at Oklahoma and it's still there, these guys, he's 24, 25. If they don't grow up, then they're not going to grow up. So
Could you imagine the Packers trading Rodgers to Cleveland after the season's up?
Cleveland give him 3 first-round picks because
It's
what
Cleveland.
Browns do. Yeah, that would not surprise me. So Baker was the draft class with Rosen, that whole draft class. Have you guys looked at the recent stats of that draft class? It's pretty wild.
Rosen 0.
Yeah, Rosen is now on a practice squad.
I'm convinced Josh Rosen didn't get a fair shake.
I think so. Too.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we're
And
all on that
unfortunately for him, quarterbacks are head cases, so it doesn't matter.
boat. Right.
But he is one of those going to go down in history as a footnote. But I don't know if you ever could have known, what he was capable of.
Yeah.
I still think he was super accurate at UCLA.
Yeah.
I think he had a ton of potential, and he just ended up in a bad situation. I've said this multiple times. Situation in football, as I got older, and it was kind of, you think like, oh, who's the best of all time? And I'm not saying Brady isn't. Situation means so much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Alvin Kamara was a throwaway player at Tennessee, and one coach
Yeah.
fell in love with him.
And now he's a superstar.
That coach was Sean Payton, who wanted to center his entire
Yes.
offense around him.
Yeah.
That
Crazy.
fit, he wouldn't have gone anywhere else and been a factor. So fit is so important. And as a rookie, you come in and you just don't fit. It's just so dejecting. And they're kids. One of my draft picks, Antonio Gandy Golden, they were like, he had flashes of just brilliance. He went to Liberty, though. And one of the things they're saying, Ron Rivera is basically saying, he's having trouble adjusting to basically the big time.
Yeah.
Is the idea that he went to Liberty and now he's in the NFL and he's making kid mistakes.
Right.
So it's like he could be awesome, but gotta grow up.
Right.
So it's tough. I think Josh Rosen didn't get a fair shake. The other thing too is if you look at other people in that class, it was a better draft for other positions.
Right. Yeah. But going into that draft, it was quarterback,
yeah.
and Baker's looking like a bust. Allen is okay. Rosen is a total bust.
Outside of Lamar,
That was Darnold.
Darnold too.
Darnold, and then the best one was Lamar Jackson.
I think Darnold. There's a lot of people, and I think that if you cross-reference with a lot of people with Jets fans, there would be a heavy overlap. But a lot of people think Sam Darnold's going to take a big step forward this year.
I said that last year.
So last year it didn't matter if he did, though. You still
Right.
would give him another year. If he
Right.
doesn't take the step forward this year, then it's back up and start to part.
Right.
Josh Allen is good. He needs to refine a little bit more, but that team is so filthy around him that he might just need to be a 7, and
true.
be fine.
True. Yeah.
Darnold, so those two could still be hits.
But Darnold has no help either.
So I disagree with that. This year, he has enough to. If you go, we gave him Le'Veon Bell. We have now given him. We have now given him a high draft pick in Denzel Mims.
Right.
We went out and got Brashard Perryman, who was looking good. So he's got some pieces, and their defense isn't bad, and their offensive line isn't bad. So if he can't do it now, like if you were to say that last year, I totally agree with you. Even 2 years ago, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, how much do you need to give him for him to succeed? If you look at good quarterbacks, they'll make other guys better.
Right. Fair.
See, I disagree. Like, Rashad Perryman was still a first-round bust out of Baltimore. Chris Herndon's been injured completely and still hasn't shown anything up. Lev Bell, yes, he has the history, but he had his career worst year last year.
And apparently been terrible in training camp.
Mekhi Becton having a first year as a left tackle on that offensive line. He hasn't had any training camp or experience. I think people are just going to plow over him.
Have they bulked up that line at all?
Becton's a beast. I'm sorry, though. Becton is a beast.
Listen, he has the size and the frame. Like, don't get me wrong, that picture of Becton and Jamison Crowder standing next to each other was phenomenal. But like, everybody says that Becton was completely raw and that he needed seasoning. And like, you look at the other tackles that came out of that class. That's why the Giants took Andrew Thomas at number 3, because he was the most polished. And I think the Giants were looking at. So we're like, all right, well, we have this COVID year. If we're not, the development of these players is going to be a lot more difficult than compared to previous years. So give us the sure thing talent of what we have now.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see.
They got. I agree with you. If you want to bash on the players, but they got the players they wanted. Like, the receiving core is much better than it was 2 years ago. They have Le'Veon Bell. Yeah, if those players sticks, but he's got to make them better. If you're a great quarterback in this league, you make those players better. Peyton Manning gave you guys 11 Hall of Famers. None of them were that good. How many Hall of Famers did Tom Brady make? And I know we're talking about the two of the greats of all time, but even good quarterbacks make guys better. You know what I mean? Like, you go look at Amari Cooper. He wallows away at the Raiders, and he goes to Dallas with Dak, who's a good quarterback, and he looks like a friggin' All-Pro every year.
I think the only Hall of Famer Brady made was Edelman.
Let's just move on.
I've never seen Gronkowski do well on any other team.
Oh yeah, well, he's gonna be Hall of Famer. No, so as your house Patriots fan, everybody's got their expectations all over the place. I think the defense is going to be solid, and it's just a matter of if they get that offense clicking and doing stuff. Their range, to me, they're no worse than an 8-8 team, but upside, I mean, you have Belichick. We will probably find out more about Belichick and McDaniels, because like you were saying before about McDaniels, I mean, Tim Tebow was chosen by McDaniels back in the day.
Right.
So he wanted to do things offensively that the slow turd of Tim Tebow, even though I love the guy, the guy's amazing off the field.
Right.
That McDaniels is going to try and do some stuff. So I don't want to be a biased homer, but like, I think they're going to just edge into the playoffs. And then with the Patriots, if you get in the playoffs, who knows what can happen, you know?
I'm excited because this is kind of what the football fans have been waiting for so long. The Patriots have been good for so long, and there's been the debate, like, is it Belichick? Is it Brady? Why have they been so good? We don't know. They've been together. What happens when they separate? Now they're actually separate. Brady's going to get probably 2 years in the league, and we're going to see how good Brady really is, or how much Belichick was, the mastermind behind all of it. So I'm excited to see.
This is the crazy part. Like, as a Patriots fan, I kind of want them to have a terrible year to just go get a quarterback. Because, I don't expect Cam to stay after this year, nor do I think that's necessarily a wise thing.
Right.
Even if I have high expectations and hope with him, I just don't think that's a good move for your dynasty moving forward.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what to think of that whole situation, because it's like they finally split up and we're going to see who's, 1A and 1B. But it's biased.
It is.
Belichick received almost nothing in return. And I'm not bashing on Brady, the team is an all-star team. Like, He should be good.
Yes.
He should be very good.
Yeah.
Any quarterback should be very good with that team. So if they come out and Brady just murders it, and Belichick if the Patriots go 8-8, I'm not going to think negatively of Bill Belichick and positively
but
of
the
Tom
perception
Brady.
of it will be.
The only way it could really skew is if Brady just falls totally flat and Belichick then goes
or vice
wins,
versa.
or vice versa. So I think it's kind of a very, amoeba situation where you just got to pay attention to it. But there's a huge chance that none of that, impacts how I view either one of them. Like, I think Brady is a top 3 quarterback of all time. I think having a coach who's also probably a top 2 coach of all time ended up getting them a ton of Super Bowls.
Right.
I think it's a bad thing. I don't think you can deny how great either one of them was, but
yeah,
I don't think one has to be a bigger part.
Right.
Agreed.
But that will definitely be the storyline of the year.
Exactly. And that's the thing that's a shame is, the Buccaneers one way or another could come out and just burn the world down, and everyone go, oh, Brady, look at, he's got to be the greatest of all time. He's establishing outside. He's got
that team is
murderer's row of talent. When they signed Fournette, I was like, you got to be kidding.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the Cowboys, though. And this is not to pump up your team. I am invested in CD in our league, and I am paying heavy attention to that wide receiver stuff. I heard a lot of good stuff about CD coming out of camp that I just hope is so true. But I really want to see where Gallup goes because of this. And at the same time, now my personal perception is CD is going to gain a lot of value. Gallup's going to still be good, but not the same fantasy value as historically, even though a lot of other people are on the other side of that argument.
Well, Gallup, I think, is towards the end of his contract, too.
Yeah, Gallup's in the last year, so they'll probably let him go because he'll garner a decent-sized contract that they can't afford next year.
Right.
He'll be a Jacksonville Jaguar.
It's actually why I kind of came around in the CD pick, because I think it was either my dad or Jim. It was basically like Gallup's in a contract year, and I was like, oh, that makes that pick a lot more viable.
Reasonable, yeah.
Because you basically cannot, going into signing Dak, you cannot have any other big book roster sides.
Right. And to block the Eagles.
Yeah, that's true.
They block themselves anyway, so
I do think it's a strange situation, because I agree with what you're saying about CD. It's almost like he is viewed now so highly that I wonder if it almost benefits Amari, because teams are not going to do the rookie thing where they're not going to put help over Amari and abandon the rookie and let the rookie go one-on-one. I feel like teams are going to play them as equals. And Amari, that means Amari Cooper's going to get one-on-one coverage a lot. So it'll be interesting. It's one of those things where somehow the Dallas Cowboys became, like, remember when Drew first got to the Saints and it was, who do you draft? Because there was like 9 receivers and running backs. And it was like, oh, I want Deuce McAllister. No, I want, Marquise Colston. There was like a million people to choose from.
Right.
And nobody had fantasy value because it was so spread out.
Right.
It could be similar, where you just don't know week to week who's going to get what. As a fan of the team, I'm very excited. I think if you look at how good their offense was last year, going forward, they should be even better. Defensively, their front 7 is filthy. Their secondary is a total train wreck. So unless they can get to quarterbacks fast, they're going to get beat deep, and it's going to be some high-scoring games for the Dallas Cowboys.
I think they're getting into the playoffs, and I think they're going to patch their secondary throughout the season.
I think because the Eagles are basically made of glass,
it's bad.
I think the Cowboys win that division. Just the Eagles are paying a guy to basically live in a bubble at home and not get hurt, because when all their team gets hurt, they're like, well, at least we have a quarterback in
it's
reserve. It's
insane.
So I do think they win that division. I think the Giants take a small step forward. I disagree. I think Washington's going to stink out loud with the Washington picks, and the Eagles are still really good. So I think it'll come down to it. I think just injuries.
What is up with the love for Blake Jarwin?
It's a good question. He's got to be smart. He went to Stanford, I think. He probably knows the playbook inside and out, and if Dak likes him, they go to their tight end a lot. It's one of those things where Dak's becoming, you're just trying to ingratiate yourself to that quarterback as much as humanly possible to make him stay and want to take less money. So I assume he likes him. I assume it's one of those things where he's a complete tight end. He's a decent pass catcher. He's a good run blocker, and he's a good pass blocker. Yeah. So
I think the problem is that they're going to expect him to be Jason Witten 2.0, and he's not.
Yeah.
That's what the hype is. They're like, he's just going to be Jason Witten, and he's not.
It is funny. The Cowboys got so much better, but the 2 massive holes they had last year at safety and tight end went completely unacknowledged, which is just super strange. Right. I've never seen a team go out of their way to get so much better, but still have 2 just gaping holes in their offense is very important, and in their defense is very important. So it worries me that they're going to get exploited there. So, but I just think with the amount of firepower they have on offense, the tight end,
and the good news with Washington, and I'm trying to prevent myself from saying the full name of that team that it used to be. But with Washington and the Giants, you expect them to be down this year. So your only real competition for the division really is the Eagles and Mr. Glass, Miles Sanders, and that offensive line. Something's going on over there, Trev.
Yeah, I don't know. Last year was just such a disaster with injuries that I don't even know how to go about it, because we still have Alshon Jeffrey on contract for this insane amount. I don't think he's even going to play all year because he has no incentive to at all. Deshaun Jackson is great if he can play, but he's probably not going to play more than 5 games. Jalen Reagor is already hurt, so we're already on the practice squad of wide receivers. Miles Sanders, I mean, that week-to-week knee injury always worries me. Luckily he got that extra week to get prepared, but even when you go into a season injured, there's always the risk for re-injury.
Were they going to cut Alshon or trade Alshon?
No one knows. He's on my fantasy team. Week to week, there is zero news. ESPN's observation on him, if you go to him, is Alshon Jeffrey continues to be one of the most frustrating people in fantasy because nobody knows anything about what is going on. They can't trade him.
Nobody's
why he isn't good. Why he isn't playing.
Yeah.
There's it's this total black hole of information with him.
He's a great player when he's on the field. Yeah. He's a cancer in the locker room. He has a huge contract. Nobody's going to want to sign him. He's just going to sit and rot for the year. I mean, I don't think he'll play at all this year, honestly. Maybe he'll come out for a game or two and then just go on IR. I don't think he's going to play, which sucks because
didn't Jason Peters sign to be a guard and then ask for more money or something crazy this offseason?
So it's really awkward because he signed to play. Yeah, I think he signed to play guard, and they tried to move him to left tackle, and he's like, "No, I want more money if I'm going to play left tackle." And then either today or yesterday, he just randomly is like, "Okay, I'll play left tackle," and it makes you wonder, be like, "Okay, so did someone pay him behind the scenes to go play left tackle?" And they're cobbling together their offensive line, who has been good every year, but now they're going to have a couple holes, it seems like. So
yeah, they've done that where it's one of those team wins Super Bowl. And the 2 reasons they won the Super Bowl is their offensive line and their defensive line.
Right.
And now you cut to, 3-4 years later? And they're trying to figure out other positions, but it's almost like, oh, we forgot.
Yeah.
Those aren't good anymore either.
Yeah.
We need to now figure out offense and defensive line again.
They won the Super Bowl, and they're like, okay, we'll sign you a lot of money, you a lot of money, you a lot of money. Yeah. Oh, we don't have any money left. And their cap space is going to be really bad.
And they needed to hit on receivers, a running back, and some back-end defensive players. And they might have hit on Miles Sanders, but they didn't hit on any receivers yet. And they hadn't hit any defensive players, so now all of a sudden they still need to hit on receivers.
They trade for
still
Slay.
need to hit,
but then the rest of them have been just.
But Darius Slay is injured constantly too.
Yeah.
So they now need to figure out the back end of their defense and the receivers, and they're pretty soon going to need to figure out their offensive and defensive lines again. So
and even when they figure out the defensive backs, they've all got hurt.
Well,
last year it was just
I think they'll still be
everyone.
good. I think the offensive and defensive lines will still be good this year. But looking forward, I'd be like, I'm worried about next year.
And they're prepared for Wentz getting injured too. So at least they have that covered now.
Wentz, I like Carson Wentz a lot. At what point, what do you do with him? He's so good when he's on the field.
Yeah. I mean, they already signed him to a pretty big contract, I think. So when his next contract comes up, we'll see where the team's at.
That's true. So you're just going to ride or die with him until then.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get a top 10 quarterback, and they seem to think he's a top 10 quarterback, you kind of just keep him around as long as you can, I think. And that's, I think, kind of where they're at. So, yeah, I mean, they seem to find a way. I mean, the best player on their team is Doug Peterson, honestly. Yeah. He's the most important part of that team.
It's true.
He's like, okay, well, this doesn't work. We'll find Boston Scott. All right, we'll figure you out, and you can do this. And he ends up having a couple great games. They make the playoffs. This year is going to be a very telling year because I think there's a possibility that it kind of all falls flat and they don't make the playoffs. But
that's a tough thing too. Is I agree with you if the players play. The problem is when players are injured, you don't get to. It's hard to pass judgment on young players that are injured. Right. So Miles Sanders, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Jalen Reagor, those are guys where if they're injured and they kind of limp along for the whole year and show a little bit, you're not going to want to part. They're good. You're going to have to sign those guys.
Right.
But you want a year of
actual play.
You want to see what you're getting.
Yep.
Like Zeke, for all his issues off the field, you knew what you were getting with signing him.
Right.
Same thing with Cam Newton. He's injured, but if we get any version of what we want, that's what we're looking for. Yeah. You don't have any sample sizes yet of those guys. The closest guy you have is Miles Sanders, but you need a full year. So that's what's so tough. And you're right, Doug. That's a good point about Pedersen. He's such a good coach, but it's not this year, but the next year will be very telling for the Eagles.
Yeah,
I think when you look at the future, you think about the Colts, and you're like, wait, they got Rivers? Are they trying to win now, or what is this?
Papa Phil.
So did they run him? Is it a 2-year contract?
1-year deal.
All right, 1 year.
$25 million.
Okay, so it's a stopgap.
Yeah, it's a stopgap deal. Jacob Eason, they said, looked impressive throwing the ball in camp and such. So we'll see where it goes. If there's a quarterback that is somewhat within reach, which I doubt within those first 3 quarterbacks next year, they could pull the trigger. I mean, Eason's a 4th-round quarterback, but they said that that Rivers will be there from multiple years. They say, I don't believe that. Why would you sign him to a
I don't know
deal?
what they're looking at, even signing Phillip Rivers.
I agree.
I constantly joke out Brady's old, like the whole Max Kellerman, he's gonna fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
Was no one watching Phillip Rivers last year?
I'm just waiting for his arm to go with the ball.
He had a dead arm.
I'm
I cannot believe a team signed him to that much. And I don't mean it. I don't know what they're going to get out of him. I think they're a run first team, so that's okay.
Yeah.
But he had a rag arm last year. That thing was dead, and he already has the weirdest throwing motion. It's not like he can gain throwing motion.
At least he'll push the ball down the field like Jacoby Brissett, who everything was just so conservative with Brissett. Pissed me off all year. Right. So, I think that's why I'm sort of curious to see what Paris Campbell does this year. More than I think about it, how Rivers throws short and stuff and those intermediate routes. Paris' speed will be really great for those type of routes. Tight end's a little banged up now. Yeah, Jack Doyle's back. Trey Burton's out on IR now for the first 6 weeks.
Trey Burton.
Trey Burton, man. Yeah. Eagles, man. That's the one you parted with at the right time.
Apparently.
So
Chicago wanted him.
But I'm glad we drafted Taylor and Pittman for those core skill players. That we still have a great offensive line. I love the Buckner acquisition overall for that defense, but I am really concerned about the secondary though as well.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I don't dislike those tight ends. It cracks me up how good Eric Ebron was for you guys last year, and it was just like
he did horrible last year. 2 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago?
2 years ago with Luck.
We had like 15 touchdowns.
Yeah,
pass. We don't need him.
Yeah,
we'll get Trey Burton.
Oh,
you looking at? They're an interesting team because their defense is very good, though.
Yes.
I love the linebacker.
And their line. When your offensive line is good as their offensive line, their defense is good as their defense, you got a chance. And they got a nice 2-headed running back. Phillip Rivers can't play football anymore. You just think about how many kids he has, too. And he's beating
he
down.
Can field a whole offense.
I was thinking about having a couple more kids.
That arm is wrecked. Yeah. That arm is wrecked, and he's tired from carrying around 17 babies. Like, it's over, for him.
Yeah.
And it stinks because he's going to go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks to never win a Super Bowl. But if he does win a Super Bowl with the Colts, if it does happen, God forbid, he's not going to be the starter. It'll be Eason will come in and be better.
Mm-hmm. Or we go trade for Aaron Rodgers.
The crap thing is that could happen. It's so bothering. I do think I'll make another bold prediction. I know we're way past that segment.
This season or next season?
No, this season. I think that coach. Why am I losing his name?
Frank Reich?
No, not
In
the
Green
Green
Bay?
Bay.
Oh, Matt LaFleur.
I think he's going to make an example out of Aaron Rodgers this year. I think they're going to run the ball all the time. And I think he's going to make an example out of Aaron Rodgers, and they're going to part with Aaron Rodgers next year.
Why? They made the conference championships last year.
Because he wants it to be his team. You're right.
Insane.
Why? They drafted a quarterback and a running back with their first two
picks.
picks.
Did you see Jordan Love throwing in camp on the run and stuff?
Terrible.
It just is horrible.
Really? Oh my!
But that's my point. That's why it's a bold prediction. I'm not saying it's a good prediction. I'm saying as a bold prediction, he makes an example out of Aaron Rodgers to turn it into his team. Because the way you got to look at it from some of these egomaniacs is if the Packers won a Super Bowl this year, who would get credit for that Super Bowl?
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't care. It's almost like if you win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, it's not your Super Bowl. I know it is, but to a degree, you're going, if I think we have the talent to win, I don't want him to get the credit. I want the credit.
That's so egocentric.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane.
But with the younger coaches, with these younger coaches, have you watched Hard Knocks? Did you see Todd McVay's house and wife?
Yep.
Yeah.
They're egomaniacs.
Yeah.
They want to be the next great young coach now.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things where I think he could make an example out of it.
Remember Cliff Kingsbury's house on the draft? How gorgeous it was and it's crazy.
And what if the Colts 5 games in the season, Phillip Rivers is total rag arm, Phil and Eason stinks, and they go, all right, give us Aaron Rodgers. We'll give you like 3 draft picks, an offensive lineman, and Marlon Mack or something like that. They'd snap it off in a second.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where his value's so high. I mean, you guys say this all the time. I'm the player guy. You guys are the value guy.
Right.
Aaron Rodgers' value is insanely high.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's never been higher than right now after they got to a conference championship.
Right. Yeah, it's true.
I think there's a chance he makes an example out of that player.
I think we also have another bold prediction and an apology to someone in the league. Nobody has reached out and said anything, but I think we were, for some of us, I don't know if everybody here said this, but I think we were poo-pooing Antonio Gibson quite a bit. It seems we are proven totally wrong. I know I was saying I didn't like the Gibson pick, but I love the pick now, and Walsh looks like a genius with that pick.
And it was totally just random circumstances that got it there, but that's how football goes. I mean,
that's one of those things we were talking about is 3 removed.
Yep.
And due to circumstances, he's potentially a starter.
Yep.
I do think they're going to committee it a little bit, though. I don't know.
Yeah, Gibson to me seemed like more of a gadget player from what I've read and from what I've seen. But I mean, going to the season, we'll see.
We'll see. They're going to get those guys. Those 3 guys
will get chances.
Are going to get the chance to be the starter.
Yeah.
The pick is much better now. You're totally right. But I have Bryce Love, so I'll be rooting there.
Yep.
And I'm sure whoever has JD.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Antonio Gibson, 1,500 total yards.
So
1,500 total yards?
Wow. Minimum.
Wow.
I do. I think he's a gadget player. My hope is that I actually think
Tyreek Hill was also a gadget player. Though.
No, I'm just saying I think all 3 of them are going to get that offense has plenty to go around.
Right.
Because there's no other than McLaurin.
There's nobody else.
There's a lot of young product. So they're going to try to let the cream rise to the top. So I think you're going to see. I think that's a lot, but I think every one of them could get 700 to 800 and see which one. My hope. The problem too is he's going to get the quickest out of the gates because Bryce Love still needs. I think it was October where they say like he's at 100%, but his body won't be
ready to
moving like it wanted to. Like he'll be able to play, but it won't be moving like he wants it to until October. So I do think just sample size in college. I know Bryce got hurt. Bryce Love was an incredible player. If he wasn't hurt, he would have been just a first round pick easy. So if he can get back to form, that's a tough battle to win. But they're both the same type of player. So
yeah, and the fact that they invested in Gibson that early in the draft, makes you think that way.
True. Yeah,
Gibson's is interesting, and it's also funny because Keyshawn Vaughn has gone the exact opposite direction. I mean,
what's funny
Gibson's
too is
shooting up boards, and Vaughn.
I'm gonna before you go back, and I'm gonna once again. This is gonna be the theme. Good GMs and bad GMs.
Yeah.
You sign Adrian Peterson and you pay him money, and then you cut him. Like that's a bad look.
Right.
You should have had more faith. It's like you didn't have faith in your draft picks.
Right.
And it costs you money.
It was. It's so funny because I mean they ended up losing Geis, which makes you think that Peterson's for sure secure. And then they cut him, and you're like, what?
That just tells you between Gibson and Love, something is spectacular there because we all know McKissick and Barber historically have been
average,
at best
to below average. Yeah,
they're like a 1 down back. They're like a change of pace back.
Yeah. McKissick will play third down.
So there's something with either Love or Gibson, or maybe both.
And then, so here's the question I have for you too: is piggybacking off of that. What about DeAndre Swift now that Adrian Peterson goes to a coach that has played him in the past, likes him in the past, he's very familiar with that system. So I like DeAndre Swift, I do, but it's one of those things where I go, he's now not the only show in town kind of thing. Like there's definitely a change
for this year for sure.
Yeah. Which is okay. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
He was probably going to be a starter, like a potential 2 to 3 down back.
Yeah. And Kerry Johnson's still on team. I mean,
I think there's multiple things to it. You have Carry-On, obviously, is fine. I'm not head over heels. When you have Carry-On, say, in the preseason, just going, DeAndre Swift, that guy's just amazing. He's so much better than me. Like, when somebody says that, you're like, okay, I know I like Swift.
Yeah.
But then AP comes in, I see it as, okay, you've got the ding up with Swift, so you need to have an extra body there.
Yeah.
And, like, he'll help, but I think there's also a part mentoring there of, like, one of the greats helping with Swift. I think that's also part of it.
Some veteran presence.
But it could be in the first year. It just could be, a 3-back committee.
Yeah.
I could see Patricia playing Peterson a lot more than people expected because his job is on the line this year, literally. So it's like he wants to play the guys that possibly give him the best chance, even though I think Swift is the better running back right now.
But there's some variable, too, where you go, if Matt Stafford's your quarterback, too, and you go, like, who's he more familiar with? He might be more familiar at this point with Adrian Peterson. He played against him for, 11 years. Mm-hmm. So it's that move you don't see coming because no one thought Adrian Peterson was going to get hurt. or traded, and you're sitting over here with DeAndre Swift and be like, all right. And then all of a sudden, it's like, all of a sudden, you're like, what the hell? Like, how'd that happen? Like,
I mean, it definitely took away the steam because I focused a lot of my redrafts this year around Swift in the 5th round. And a lot of those strategies. I mean, well, this also goes back to kind of what you were saying before about the season coming up with injuries.
Yeah.
I focused heavily of 6+ running backs in my redraft leagues because of that perception happening this year.
Yeah.
But Swift was a heavy focus. But yeah, I do feel a little dinged with Swift because of AP.
Yep.
That was. Were there any other moves, like, especially like cuts and waiver and trades that caught you guys like super off guard?
I mean,
like where your
Fournette one was insane.
Fournette one was insane. But that was like Fournette
that's
and Peterson,
the huge crazy one to me.
Yeah.
Josh Gordon signed to Seattle apparently.
Yeah, Seattle made a couple moves where I was just like, I don't get what you're doing. Yeah. I don't get why you don't bring back Clowney for what he signed.
What's his name got cut too? That the Cowboys were talking to in the defensive backfield.
Shaquem Griffin.
Earl Thomas.
Earl Thomas.
Well,
from the Ravens.
Yeah. But Earl Thomas getting cut by the Ravens.
Yeah. Well, that seemed like a bad fit.
Issues.
Yeah, with
for sure.
Locker room issue.
Yeah, I think he was getting in fights, but that's just something that
But it is strange because it had to be something more because so many people were like, "Oh, he got in a fight." I'm like, you get in a fight all the time in football and practice.
Yeah.
It's football. Punches are always thrown. So the guy, if you watch the video, the guy really blew that coverage, like really badly. Yep. And they said Earl Thomas is a perfectionist. So it's one of those things where it's shocking to me that I agree. Yeah, there was clearly an issue, but it's still shocking that you signed him as much as you did. He's as good as he is. He was an All-Pro last year. And you cut him because of that. Yeah. And you cut the other guy.
And you're a Super Bowl contending team.
Yeah. That action is also something that you tout as that's leadership.
He's fired up.
Yeah, he's making sure people are being held accountable. By
there was clearly more to that than that. I don't know if they wanted to offload his contract or immediately they were like, we don't want to. Yeah, the Seahawks in general, they've made some. They cut Shaquem Griffin, and I actually thought, I know he's a feel-good story, but I actually thought he looked really good as a pass rusher in the last 2 years. I felt like he was really finding his stride.
Very athletic,
Yeah, and they cut him.
He'll sign somewhere else.
It's just surprising because they didn't re-sign Clowney, so you lose that pass rusher, and then you cut Shaquem Griffin, who's probably your 3rd best pass rusher.
Right.
Where are you going to generate pass rush from?
Jordan Brooks, baby!
That they made. So I agree with you. The splash moves, the Seahawks are one that caught me off guard. I thought for sure Clowney would be back there. I thought for sure they'd have a decent pass rush. Now I'm looking at it going, you signed Josh Gordon. That's where you're putting your money? Josh Gordon? Like you want him on your team? At this point, I wouldn't. I'm shocked teams are still signing Josh Gordon. You know,
it's crazy.
Just excited for the action. We got a season ahead of us coming up. We'll get together when we can. We're restricted basically not because of COVID, just because we all are pretty busy at this time. So we look forward to getting together when we do. Good luck to everybody in this season. Hopefully someone can dethrone Dane. If not, congratulations on the season again, Dane. And we'll talk to you soon.
Later. Deuces.
Last word.
No, I am.